Hi, everyone. I am so sorry. We are having some technical issues. I was unable to get in as the host for the last little bit. So we're going to go through this quickly so I can get you all out on time. So I want to just thank everyone for coming, and sorry we're getting started a little late. So I want to be cognizant of your time and get started as quickly as possible. We will have my colleague Jacob Preston is here with me, and so he'll be helping me with the chat, and then I'll have some time for questions at the end. So excuse me if I talk quickly, but I know that you guys have a lot going on this week and you have a lot of things to do. So we want to just get rolling, because I know you've been waiting for a few minutes, as have I. So we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I hope. Okay. So my name is Julia Hudson. I saw some names as I was going through the chat waiting to get started. So I saw some names I recognized. So it's great to have y'all here, and I hope that the first general session went really well. I saw some winners from that session. So that's pretty exciting for y'all. So this is no-cost blended learning economics resources for grades 3 through 12. So just a quick little bit about me. I have had 13 years of education experience. The vast majority of that was as a classroom teacher, and then an academic interventionist, and now in ed tech with Everfi. I'm in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, by way of Dyersburg, Tennessee. So any fellow West Tennesseans. And then quick fact, I guess I always like to throw a fun fact in. My favorite band is the Avett Brothers. I've seen them 19 times so far. So I was really hoping for 20 in 2020, but it doesn't look like that's going to be happening. And hopefully, if you have a question throughout, I think Jacob, if he is on here, he should be able to, if he needs to interrupt me throughout the chat, because I cannot see the chat, unfortunately, right now. So just to give you a quick overview of what we're going to talk about what is Everfi, who we are, what we do, the very basics of blended learning. We're just going to look at that from a very high level, and then some instructional resources for that, and then teacher-student dashboard, how to operate that, and then some ideas for digital learning implementation. So if you don't know what Everfi is or who we are an educational technology company, as I mentioned, and we partner with over 30,000 schools all across the country. We have thousands of partners, some very large partners, some small partners, who really share our mission, which is that we are delivering engaging resources for students in K-12 schools across the country. That focus really on real world skills, so that students are going to be successful when they leave the classroom. And these are all digital, and they're all free of charge. So everything that we offer, you will see, any training, any of the resources, online or offline, is always no cost to schools and teachers. That's a huge part of our mission, and we are adamant about keeping it that way. So why are we here? Since all of this has started with the pandemic that we're still in the middle of, we really had to see a lot of educators quickly transition to online learning. And it's been really tough to mandate that across districts because, a variety of reasons, one of which we've seen is just the lack of access. That's been a huge issue before everything started, but it's really been brought to the forefront when remote learning was absolutely necessary. And so, as we go into another school year, we're looking at some schools having remote learning at the beginning, the possibility of that happening again. So we want to present things that teachers can use regardless of how school looks, whether you're in the classroom or you're doing this remotely. Education budgets, we know, are very tight. They're always very tight. And so we want to make sure that we are providing teachers with quality resources that are no cost, especially things that can be accessed remotely. And then, just thinking about parents and guardians who are working at home, or maybe they have to go into work because they're essential workers. And students are having to take on more responsibility for their learning. And so it's great to have programs where students can really work through them independently, and they're self-paced, and they can take on a little more of that responsibility even at a young age. So as we're thinking about the upcoming year, we know that as educators, you have to be flexible. We have to adapt to things all the time. Things are always changing now more than ever. So we had a poll. What is the current state, with the current state of the world, how likely is it that you would need to utilize remote or blended learning this year? And while you're thinking about that, that poll is on the GTR site. You can answer that. I'm going to unshare my screen for just a second so that I can make sure that I add Jacob as our co-presenter. Okay. All right. Hi, Jacob. We've had a morning. Okay. So I would say probably the possibility of remote learning is very likely for many of us. I know some of the districts are starting with remote learning. I know some districts just are kind of having that as a possibility. So we know that the chances of that happening are pretty likely. And Jacob, if you see any questions or anything pop up, just feel free to interrupt me. So I mentioned that we focus on real world learning skills here at Everfi, and I just wanted to very briefly talk about, a few of those topic areas that we cover. So today we're going to really look at the financial education side, but we also have things like social emotional learning, which has been a huge need going into this school year, cultural literacy, health and wellness, and a wealth of other things. We always have new resources coming out as well, which I've shared in the files. There's an all course overview, so you can see a list of everything as well as what's coming out for the next year. And like I mentioned, we do this because we have sponsors. We have partners all across the country, like the Tennessee Financial Literacy Commission and PREDS, and they provide the resources for the school so that you're never having to pay for resources, you're never having to pay for training. Everything is no cost always for K-12. So just a few quick benefits before we kind of get into the meat of the courses that we're going to talk about. For educators, there are several benefits. You get real-time reporting. So as students are going in, every lesson is going to have a pre and a post assessment. So you'll be able to see their growth and knowledge gains. You can see the timestamps, which is really helpful. And then, if you have students who need to go back and retake a lesson or retake an assessment, that's an option. You can also save that as a CSV, which is really nice for grading. There's also lesson plans and discussion questions. We have a ton of offline resources that pair with our courses. So you can take questions from those resource guides and put those into your Google Classroom for students to answer. There's lots of really great lesson plans that really take the learning to the next level and guide that discussion. And then you also have access to all the new resources coming out, as well as some scholarship opportunities, which I'm going to highlight at the end. So if you would like to kind of dive in and explore the platform a little bit while we're talking, you can go ahead, if you would like to go to everfi.com/new teacher. If you do not have an account, you can register and kind of be looking at some of those resources as we're going through the session. I will say, if you are a classroom teacher with rostered class sections, in one of the following districts, then you would go in through Clever. And you could access it that way, so you would not need to create a special account. So I'm going to pop that up really quick. I know they're showing the slides, so if you want to take a picture of this and come back later, it's absolutely fine as well. So if you're in one of these schools or districts and you have class sections, you would go in through Clever. And there is a Clever guide and a regular traditional guide in those files as well. So just to get a quick overview, we're going to look at this very high level. Most of us know what blended learning is, but just to kind of give us a quick refresher about blended learning and the basics, and then we're going to look at how we can use these resources in our classrooms. Blended learning, we all know it supports the teachers and it helps to personalize the learning. So it really increases that one-to-one and that small group interaction, which is so helpful for students. It also gives students more ownership over what they're learning and what they're doing, and helps with monitoring achievement. In my opinion, one of the most important things is that it's engaging for the students, because if they're not engaged, they're not learning. So we want to make sure we're keeping students engaged, whether they are remote, whether they're in the classroom, or whether we're doing some sort of blended learning. So basically, very high level definition is combining those online resources with your in-class paper pencil activities so that you can reach all your students and differentiate the content. So just a few quick examples. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you're welcome to look through those slides later of things that would be blended learning. So for example, completing an online food truck simulation and then having them create their plan in class the next day, or listening to an interactive read aloud and then reading their own virtual books and taking comprehension quizzes. Those would be examples of blended learning. What is not an example of blended learning? So thinking about that interactive read aloud, those are really great and fun. I used to do those a lot when I taught kindergarten. And then having students read their own books independently, nothing wrong with that, but it would not be an example of blended learning. Or like having them design a food truck business and open their truck, have one day at school. Another great activity, but it would not be considered blended learning. So the likelihood of remote learning, we all know, is possible again. So I just want you to think, and you can type these in the chat if you want, so we can kind of get some ideas. How can educators incorporate blended learning principles into the remote learning classroom? So maybe you're not necessarily going to be with those kids in person to be doing those in-person activities, but what are some of those principles of blended learning that you could possibly incorporate into that classroom if you are in a remote learning setting? I'm going to trust that y'all have some really great ideas in the chat because I can't see it, but I'm sure you do. So looking at our instructional resources, there's another poll in the GTR chat. What grade level do you think students should start learning economics and financial literacy? So the options were K2, 3-5, 6-8, or high school. So what do you feel like is the most appropriate grade level for them to start learning those economics, financial literacy basics?
We got a bunch of answers coming in, Julia. It looks like 3-5, 6-8, and I wasn't able to come off mute, but there was quite a few people that answered the poll earlier about blended learning principles into remote learning. Looked like Ina said interacting, engaged, and assessment. And then for this question, it looks like a lot of 3-5, K2, 6-8. So kind of, really from a Tennessee perspective, a little counter to what we've traditionally done with financial literacy when students start that in high school.
Yeah. So like Jacob mentioned, here in Tennessee, typically we teach financial literacy, personal finance in high school. However, it is great if we can start that earlier. So children as young as kindergarten and pre-K can really start to benefit from curriculum that's designed around just those foundational skills of financial literacy. So maybe you're not necessarily talking about budgeting and income, but you're putting those foundations in place. So you're talking about things like self-regulation, which we know is so important for little ones, prioritizing, so thinking about wants and needs, and then you know, those core concepts that make up financial literacy and financial capability really have to be emphasized from the earliest grades so that they can become financially literate consumers later in life. Typically, we wait until high school to introduce that. I don't know that I was taught that even in high school. I think I learned that as an adult. But really, sometimes that's too late. So if we can back that up and start talking about those concepts earlier, we're going to set those students up for more success later. So just to give you a quick overview, we are looking at this particular vertical today, and this just shows you, you know, the resources that are currently available. So Vault, Future Smart, Venture, Everfi, and Marketplaces are the main courses we're going to look at as far as financial education goes. So I mentioned this already, but every module or every lesson is going to look pretty much the same. There's a pre-assessment, introduce the content, there's some guided independent practice, and then a post-assessment. They're all pretty much laid out that way, regardless of what the lesson is or what the course is. So our first course we're going to talk about very quickly is Vault. This is our Understanding Money resource for elementary school. This covers actually a lot of counseling standards for 3rd to 5th grade, and it also aligns really closely with our Jumpstart standards. We work closely with the Jumpstart board here in Tennessee. We're actually on the board, so we have a lot of insight from them, and the Tennessee Financial Literacy Commission helps us provide this resource for our students across elementary schools and some middle schools as well in Tennessee. So one thing I want to mention about this particular resource is that it is available in Spanish, which is really helpful for a lot of students. I actually have people in middle school and high school who will use this course with their students who need that Spanish version as, you know, that first step to get them started. So don't let the suggested grade levels deter you if it's something that you think your students need. So just to give you a little insight, we actually just completely redid this course. So it is brand new this year. And in my opinion, it has been much improved. So hopefully teachers will agree, but this really sets students up for the very basics of making smart financial decisions. And then also helps with social emotional skills. So we took a really big focus on that as well this year in this resource. So even though they are learning about things like budgeting and income and careers, they're doing it through that SEL lens. So they're applying it in things like being a responsible decision maker, being respectful of your friends when you borrow things from them, taking care of it, and how they're not going to let you borrow it if you don't. So things like that, but in the context of money and finance. So it really lets students see things that are real world problems and work together with the group in the game to solve those problems for the other characters. So from Vault, we go into Future Smart. This is the middle school version, and this is kind of like 201. This is also in Spanish, so always helpful for students. And this one's really fun because students get to be the mayor of their own town. So students are going to be put in situations where they have real life financial decisions that they have to make for their citizens. So it could be the simplest thing of helping a child pick out decorations for their bedroom and helping them budget, or helping someone through the financial aid process of college. And then our high school version, which many of you may use if you teach personal finance, is Everfi Financial Literacy. So all of these fit in really well with our Jumpstart standards, personal finance, economic standards. This is probably our most widely used resource, I would say, in Tennessee. We have tons of high schools that use this, and it's in Spanish as well. I always want to make sure I mention that because teachers always have that question. But they just redid this last year to make it more relevant and more modern for students. So students are going to learn things like just the basics of banking, budgeting, and consumer skills. There's a great lesson about financing higher education where there's a sample FAFSA that they work through. So it's really helpful when that time of year rolls around. So it's a really great resource to walk students through the basics of financial literacy. And then, of course, there's a lot of offline lesson plans as well that you can use with this course. So from that, we also have Marketplaces. Marketplaces is very short. It's only about an hour to go through the entire lesson, and this is all about investment basics. So, the stock market, the government's role in the economy. This course, students can work through it pretty quickly. There's only 5 lessons with it, but it works really well with those economic standards as well, like we mentioned. And then Venture is an entrepreneurship resource. So Venture could be used in a lot of different classes, different business and CTE classes. And this one's really fun for students because they're running a food truck business. And through this, they are going to create their business pitch and learn about how to grow a business and build their business. And there's always going to be feedback throughout. So it's going to help students make the best decisions. This one's a pretty short one as well, only 4 lessons. But I do want to mention that this one in particular has a great scholarship opportunity. So for Venture, if students take 1 lesson of Venture, students in 9th through 12th grade, they will be prompted to apply for a scholarship. So here in the state of Tennessee, Fifth Third Bank provides 2 $2,500 scholarships for students in 9th through 12th grade each semester through this resource. So they take 1 lesson. It's a very brief essay question and form to fill out, and that's it. So I know we had a student from MMPS win this year. We've had some students from Sumner County who have won. So it's just a really great option when you're looking for those scholarships. So to walk you through, we're going to go through this quickly. You should have teacher quick start guides in the files that we sent. And if you're already exploring, then I'm going to just kind of move through this. But I just want to give you a quick overview of what the dashboard look like. And so you'll know how that works. And if you have questions, you can feel free to reach out and email me if you need some more direction on that. So you should have the traditional quick start guide for those non-clever districts. It's just going to ask you when you go to everfi.com/new teacher to select your state and school. And then it will ask you to choose your username and password and select a resource. So you can always add more once you're in there, but it's just going to ask you to add 1 to get started. Again, there are those clever districts, just in case you need to know. So once you're in the dashboard, you will be able to see it's pretty intuitive and easy to navigate. So you'll see the first thing I want to make sure you know how to do is to add courses. So you would go to your catalog or add course button. You're going to go to the same place. Either way, it will take you to the same page and you'll see this. So once you're here, you can add any resources that look like something that might be appealing to you. From there, you'll see that the grade levels are listed. Again, those are suggestions, not necessarily requirements. Feel free to use what you think your students need. And then if you see a request button, it will just send me an email and I can add it to your school for you. So feel free to add whatever you need. And you'll be able to look at the course and decide if it's something you want to use. From there, it will add it to your teacher dashboard. That's where you'll be able to view the course. You can see what the students are going to see and what they're going to be doing. And you'll also be able to view the resources, which we'll look at in just a second. Those are going to be the offline resources, the standards alignment, the curriculum guides for planning. Anything you need is going to be housed there. So that's just an idea of kind of what the lesson plans look like. They are laid out very carefully. There's been a lot of work put into these. Most of the people who work in the schools area at Everfi are former teachers. So We want to make sure that we are planning these to fit what you need and what it should look like in the classroom. And it's just a really great way to extend the learning. You'll see some of our lessons have parent guides and parent questions that are great for getting them involved at home as well. So if you are a teacher who logged in the traditional way, when you create your class, it is going to generate a code for you. So what you would need to do is just click the green Create Class button, and the Quick Start Guide is going to show you this too. So I'm going to move through it quickly. And it will ask you to name your class, okay, and an estimated start date, estimated class size, and grade level. You can put multiple grade levels if you teach more than one grade level. And then it will ask you to add courses. So anything already added is going to be listed here, and then you should be able to add any additional courses on your teacher dashboard just by clicking that Add Courses button. You can always go back in and edit later if you want, and then click Create. For Clever teachers, when you go to create your class, your Clever class sections will be listed and you can choose the one you want to assign. So it's pretty simple. It will generate a code for you, and you don't have to remember the code. So only teachers that go in the traditional way will need the code. This is how your students will access. And I think Jacob may have gotten kicked out. So if you're chatting, I'll have to look at the very end. But this is how your students will access. They will put the code in and then set up their account. You can also, there's a CSV that you can create accounts for your students and put them in that way. And I can help with that too, if that's something that you ever need. Maybe for your younger students, but the code is how they will be linked to your class. And then to look at your created classes, you would just go to the Classes tab, very simple. And you can see any classes that you've set up, as well as the courses that are on that have been assigned to that class. That's where you can edit. So if you're halfway through the year and you want to add some resources, then you can absolutely go in and edit that way and add those courses. And then very quickly, I want to show you how to look at your progress. When you go to the Reports tab, you will be able to see a drop-down menu listing the different resources. These are the resources that you have created classes for. You can choose the resource. Sorry. And you'll be able to list by class. You can search by name. You'll be able to see the students who have started the resource. So only students who have actually begun will be listed. And you'll see their post-test scores. So even though right now you'll see the post-test score for every module. So even though, like, for example, Alyssa has started, she has no scores because she has not completed the modules. When you click view, you'll be able to see pre and post, and that's where you can see the timestamps as well. So that's very helpful. And then the student dashboard is very simple. There's not a lot they can mess up here, to be totally honest. They have pretty much a continue or get started button. And then they'll have a picture to help them in case they're not sure which course it is and their progress. And I will say one thing that I'll notice is that there are no grade levels listed. So except for Alcohol EDU for high school, we do have a college version of that. So that is why that says high school. Nothing else has the grade level listed. So if you're using like a middle school resource for high school students, they are not going to know that. Those grade levels are not going to be listed there for that purpose. And you'll see that students can add more courses through those course codes if that is something they need to do throughout the year. So just to give you a few ideas, I know we're going quick, but I want to get y'all out on time for digital learning implementation. Thinking about things like Google Classroom, we know that that has been a great resource for a lot of teachers this year, and a lot of schools are using that. But pulling in questions and putting those in your Google Classroom for your students to create that discussion routine for them. So taking them from those discussion guides, posting that into the Google Classroom so students can work on modules at home or in a blended learning setting in your classroom, and then posting those for them on Google Classroom is just a great way to keep the conversation going. I know we all have a little Zoom fatigue probably at this point, but having that face-to-face time, even though it is not the same, is still really important for our students. So give them discussion guides or questions in your learning management system, assign things to them that way, have them work through those independently, and then have a face-to-face meeting, as it were, to answer any questions and to discuss that material and just to check in and see how students are doing. For another great tool is Canva, which I'm sure a lot of you use. It is a great one for visually showing what students are learning, to really synthesize and deepen the learning. And this could be used as a ticket, an exit ticket for learning. But this one's really fun for students. It's a great tool for engagement to show students or to show teachers what they are learning, whether it's at home or in the classroom. And then I'm sure you all know sharing on social media is huge. So many schools and districts have active Twitter accounts. Teacher Twitter is huge. We're very active on Twitter as well. So these are actual examples of, of teachers who have posted on Twitter and, things that they're sharing. So this particular teacher was actually sharing screenshots of step-by-step for how their students needed to log in at home so the parents could help them. We have student quick start guides you can share, or just shouting out your students who are doing great work and who are doing things, whether at home and in the classroom. That's a really great way to share as well. And then those student quick start guides that are going to kind of walk your kids through how to get started. We have those for clever schools as well as non-clever, and you can share those. They're editable for you. So if you need those, feel free to reach out. We can help you with that. We can share those with you, and you can edit those and post them in your LMS or on social media, or however you are communicating with your students, however that may look this year. So just to kind of wrap up in a few minutes, and then I'm going to unshare my screen in a second because I think Jacob was kicked out, unfortunately. So that way I can see the chat if there's any questions at the end. But I wanted to make sure I shared our certified teacher program. So we have partnered with Bloom Board to have micro credentials in financial education and STEM. And so you can learn some more about that on our website if you go to, I'm going to move this over, everfi.com/certified-teacher. But our application window opens in mid-August for this cohort. They get a certificate for 8 hours of PD. There's a lot of opportunity for discussion and giving feedback on curriculum and products. And then you also get a digital badge for your email signature and your resume and website showing that you are a certified, Everfi certified teacher. And I did want to highlight those scholarships. I know I mentioned the Fifth Third Academy scholarship, or Fifth Third Finance Academy. That is the one that is associated with Venture. It's $2,500 529 college savings scholarship. And I also wanted to mention that we have a scholarship that is for any K-12 student. So if you have students in 3rd or 4th grade who are completing the Vault resource, they do have to complete the whole resource for this particular scholarship, but they can apply for a $1,000 529 college savings scholarship. So even little ones are eligible for this, but they do have to complete the resource. Whereas with Venture, they only have to do one lesson. So if you have questions, I'm going to look at the chat in just a second. Feel free to chat those in. You can also email me, and my information is going to be on the next page as well. It's just jhudson@everfi.com. And it is here also. Feel free, if you have questions, you can call me or text me at this number, 615-928-2392, or find me on Twitter. Everfi is also very active on Twitter. So we share a lot of things and have a lot of great teacher discussions on there as well. And then I want to make sure I give you your session keyword for the end. That is Alaska. So make sure that you put that in. I think when you go in to do your survey at the very end, it will ask you for that. So I'll leave that up for just a second, and I'm going to unshare my screen so that I can look at some of your chats, hopefully. It has been a little bit chaotic, I know. And I hate that I cannot hear y'all. Let's see if I can pull up some of your chats. Okay. And the session, okay, the session ID, is that, I think that was someone's question. So I will type that in for you as well. Okay. And I see several names on here. So thank y'all all for coming. I'm sorry we got started a little bit late. And I think they should be sharing the slides with all of you as well as the files. Those are in our session too. So thank you so much for coming, and I think we have about 1 more minute, so I'm going to hang out for a couple of minutes. I know y'all are heading to other sessions, but I appreciate you coming and being patient with our technical issues first thing this morning, but hopefully we got that all sorted out. Maybe that won't be a problem for anybody else today. Thanks, everyone. Y'all have a great day.